Mongolia, a vast landlocked country sandwiched between the Siberian forests of Russia to the north and the formidable Gobi Desert of China to the south. Its area is approximately 1.564 million square kilometers. Yet this continent-sized nation is home to only around 3.5 million people. That's an average of just 2 people per square kilometer. This statistic has given Mongolia the undisputed title of the world's most sparsely populated sovereign nation. But why this emptiness? Why is this vast country an almost uninhabited expanse? In a world where a small country like Bangladesh has more than 1,200 people per square kilometer, Mongolia's sparse population seems like an epic mystery. Where are the descendants of the land from which Genghis Khan's cavalry once set out to conquer half the world? How did this inexorable reality of depopulation take shape over centuries? Let's delve into the story from its very beginning. To begin the story of Mongolia's sparse population, one must first look at its land, water, and air. While its nature mesmerizes with its primal and wild beauty, its harsh and unforgiving character turns survival into a difficult struggle. Mongolia's climate is defined as extreme continental. Being hundreds of kilometers from the sea and surrounded by a massive landmass, the seasonal and daily temperature differences are incredible. In summer, daytime temperatures can easily reach 40 degrees Celsius. In that same place during winter, the temperature plummets to minus 40 degrees Celsius. This enormous 80-degree swing poses a significant challenge for both wildlife and human settlement. The winter here is not just cold, it is long, lasting from October to April, more than half the year. During this time, the frigid air flowing from Siberia, known as the Siberian anticyclone, turns the entire country into a frozen kingdom. Rivers, lakes, everything freezes solid. This bone-chilling cold brings daily life to a near standstill and presents the toughest test for pastoralists. This extreme climate and an average elevation of about 1,580 meters above sea level make Mongolia almost unsuitable for agriculture. Only 0.8% of the country's total land is permanently arable. The remaining 99% is comprised of grasslands or steppes, rugged mountains, and desert. In the north, vast mountain ranges like the Altai and Khangai Mountains block rain-bearing clouds, creating a rain shadow effect, which results in almost no rainfall in the southern parts. Consequently, the country's south is home to the world's 5th largest desert, the Gobi. This is not a sandy desert, but a cold, rocky plain that covers nearly a third of Mongolia. Due to climate change, this desert is gradually expanding, encroaching on pasture land and making the lives of nomads even more difficult. Water sources are also extremely limited. A few major rivers, like the Selengi and Orkhon, flow northward into Russia's Lake Baikal. The rest of the country relies on small rivers or saline lakes for water. This limited and uneven water distribution acts as a natural barrier to the development of large, permanent settlements. Then there is nature's angel of death, known as the Dzud. For Mongolian nomads, the word Dzud is a personification of terror. It is not a single natural disaster, but a horrific combination of several. A Dzud can take various forms. For example, the Tsagan Dzud, or White Dzud, occurs when an unusually heavy snowfall after a summer drought buries the pastures under several feet of snow. Animals cannot dig through the snow to reach the grass. Then there is the Kar Dzud, or Black Dzud, where there is no snow, but the cold is so intense that animals in the open freeze to death, and water sources freeze completely. Another devastating form is the Tumur Dzud, or Iron Dzud, where snow falls, melts slightly as temperatures rise, and then refreezes, forming a hard crust of ice over the ground that is impossible for livestock to break. In recent decades, due to climate change, the Dzud has become more frequent and destructive. For instance, in the Dzud of 2009 to 2010, nearly 8 million livestock perished. A single Dzud can bankrupt a herder family overnight, destroying a livelihood built over generations. This terrifying natural disaster has historically served as a major impediment to Mongolia's population growth. Hidden in the depths of Mongolia's empty plains is the long shadow of its turbulent history. From imperial expansion to religious revolution, and the brutal political purges of the 20th century, each event has left a deep scar on its population. In the 13th century, under the leadership of Genghis Khan and his successors, the Mongols established the largest contiguous land empire in human history. This empire stretched from the shores of the Pacific Ocean to Central Europe. To manage the empire and rule newly conquered territories, millions of Mongol warriors, administrators, and their families left the Mongolian heartland and spread out to various corners of the empire. They settled as the new ruling class in Persia, China, Russia, and Central Asia. After the empire's fall, most of them never returned to Mongolia, instead assimilating with the local populations. This process can be seen as a form of population export, which deprived the Mongolian heartland of a large portion of its most able-bodied and reproductive population. Following the empire's collapse, Mongolia went through centuries of political instability and fragmentation. During this period, in the 16th century, the Gelug, or Yellow Hat school of Tibetan Buddhism, spread extensively. This religion became so deeply embedded in Mongolian society that it turned into a social custom. Almost every family would dedicate at least one, sometimes several, of their sons to become Buddhist monks or lamas. These lamas remained celibate for life and abstained from family life. The consequences were severe. By the early 20th century, nearly 40% of Mongolia's adult male population consisted of Buddhist monks. The removal of such a large number of men from the reproductive pool severely hampered the country's natural birth rate for centuries. It acted as a long-term, invisible controller of the population, making growth nearly impossible. In the 17th century, the Manchu-led Qing dynasty brought Mongolia under its control and ruled for about 200 years. The Qing rulers feared the Mongols as fierce warriors and sought to prevent them from uniting. They adopted various strategies to weaken them. They divided Mongolian territory into different administrative banners, or koshu, and travel between them was strictly controlled. At the same time, they further encouraged the spread of Buddhism, believing that a devout and pacifist Mongol nation would be less of a threat to their rule. These policies not only diminished the Mongols' military power and political unity, but also helped stabilize or reduce their population. The darkest chapter in Mongolia's demographic history was written in the 20th century, under the shadow of the Soviet Union. Although Mongolia was declared a People's Republic in 1924, it effectively became a Soviet puppet state. In the 1930s, under the direct orders of Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, a horrific state-sponsored terror was unleashed in Mongolia. Its main targets were the country's intellectuals, elites, and especially the Buddhist religious institutions. In a campaign modeled after Stalin's Great Purge, about 30,000 people were executed in Mongolia, more than 17,000 of whom were Buddhist monks. Over 700 of the country's monasteries were completely destroyed. This massacre eliminated nearly 3 to 5% of the nation's total population. It was a systematic assault on the country's brain and soul, which forever changed the structure of Mongolian society and population, and created a deep psychological wound. In addition, the Soviet model attempted to destroy the nomadic way of life by forcing herders into collectives or negdels, which broke down traditional Mongolian social and economic structures. The reasons for Mongolia's sparse population are not limited to external pressures or historical events. They are also deeply intertwined with the Mongolian philosophy of life. The nomadic pastoralist culture, developed over thousands of years, has shaped their settlement patterns, social structure, and relationship with nature. The life of a Mongolian nomad is not stationary. They move with the seasons, a practice known as otor, in search of new pastures and water for their millions of livestock, sheep, goats, horses, yaks, and camels. Their home is the jir, a circular tent made of felt and a wooden frame. It can be dismantled and reassembled in just a few hours, perfectly suiting the mobile nature of nomadic life. In this lifestyle, there is no place for densely populated cities or villages. Nomadic culture places the highest value on vast open spaces and freedom. Each family requires a huge area for their herds to graze. Consequently, families live scattered, kilometers apart from each other. Their social unit is the Kot Ale, a small group of families who travel together and help one another. This way of life naturally keeps the population pressure on the land low. Nomadic culture teaches people to see themselves as part of nature, not its controller. Mongolians believe that the land, sky, and water are sacred. They traditionally considered tilling or digging the earth a form of disrespect. This philosophy discouraged the concept of private land ownership. The land belongs to everyone, open for the grazing of animals. This mentality also acted as a cultural barrier to the formation of large, permanent, and property-centric settlements. Although about a third of Mongolia's population still lives a nomadic or semi-nomadic lifestyle today, the effects of modern globalization have reached them. Satellite dishes, solar panels, and motorcycles are now common companions in nomadic life. The younger generation is moving towards the city in search of better education, healthcare, and jobs. But this thousand-year-old nomadic culture is so ingrained in the Mongolian psyche that it continues to shape the country's overall population distribution. A life philosophy of self-reliance and freedom spread across a vast expanse. In the 21st century, new and powerful factors have been added to Mongolia's demographic equation, making the narrative of its sparse population even more complex and multifaceted. After the fall of the Soviet Union, Mongolia embraced a free market economy and opened its vast mineral resources to foreign investment. The country is extremely rich in copper, coal, gold, uranium, and other rare minerals. The mining industry is now the main driver of the economy and accounts for a large portion of the GDP. However, this reliance on mining has created an economic imbalance known as the Dutch disease or the resource curse. The excessive growth of the mining sector strengthens the national currency, causing other productive sectors like agriculture and animal husbandry to lag behind competitively. While mining generates immense wealth, it does not create many jobs. As a result, the vast rural areas of the country, traditionally dependent on herding, are falling behind economically. The allure of economic opportunity, better education, healthcare, and modern life has created an incredible flow of people from the countryside to the cities over the past 2 decades, especially to the capital, Ulaanbaatar. This uncontrolled internal migration has taken on explosive proportions. Today, about 1.7 million of the country's total 3.5 million people, nearly half the population, live in the single major city of Ulaanbaatar. This has put immense pressure on the capital, leading to severe air pollution, among the world's worst in winter, intense traffic congestion, a housing crisis, and growing social inequality. Meanwhile, the other 99% of the country's land has become even more deserted, almost abandoned. One can travel hundreds of kilometers outside Ulaanbaatar and see nothing but a few scattered gers. Thanks to the expansion of education during the Soviet era, Mongolia's literacy rate is around 98%. However, there are not enough quality jobs in the country for its highly educated youth. Outside of Ulaanbaatar, there is virtually no future for them. Consequently, a large number are migrating abroad, especially to South Korea, the United States, and Europe, in search of work. This brain drain is further depleting the country's human resources. At the same time, the new generation, accustomed to urban life, is no longer interested in returning to the arduous profession of herding, pushing the country's traditional pastoral sector into a labor crisis. Mongolia's emptiness is not the result of a single cause. It is a complex and multifaceted narrative, with each chapter interconnected. Its harsh and extreme nature has made survival a supreme test. Its bloody history has repeatedly culled the population while also shaping its psychological framework. Its thousand-year-old nomadic culture has made the concept of dense settlement irrelevant and has established a different relationship with nature. And finally, its modern mining-dependent economy and uncontrolled urbanization have given the country's population distribution a severely imbalanced form. The combined result of all these factors is the sparsely populated Mongolia of today, a vast, quiet, and almost empty land. However, this emptiness has its own beauty and majesty. Here, nature still exists in its primitive and untamed form. Here, people learn to appreciate their own smallness in the face of nature's vastness, and give the ultimate test of resilience. From the perspective of modern economic development, Mongolia's sparse population may be a challenge, but it is also its unique identity, its strength, and the very foundation of its culture. Today, Mongolia stands at a historical crossroads. Climate change threatens its nomadic way of life. A mining-based economy is increasing social inequality, and the younger generation is torn between tradition and modernity. How they will use this vast empty space, how they will harness its resources sustainably to build a balanced society. On this depends the future of Genghis Khan's descendants. Though few in number, their resilience and their thousands of years old philosophy of coexisting with nature could be a profound and relevant lesson for today's noisy, overcrowded world.